What advice would you give to people who are preaching or doing teaching for high school students? Like, there's lots of styles, so I'm not really talking style. Yeah. I love the church and its diversity and style of preaching. But when it comes to some of the mechanics, how we approach the text or how we interact with it, in math class, even if you had the right answer, but you didn't show the work, that was problematic. So I've been thinking, like, what's the responsibility of the preacher, not just to give the answer, but show the work? And I've just been thinking about these things. I wonder what advice you would give for those of us who are getting in front of teenagers and giving messages, teaching, sermons, as we're introducing them to the Bible through that medium.
Yeah, one thing, you could take this or leave this, but I think, okay, metaphor real quick. How much time? Okay, metaphor real quick. How many of y'all listen to hip hop? Okay, let me try a different genre. You know what sampling is in music, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Don't laugh that hard, man. Like, it was just a little joke.
I believe you. So when sampling happens, I'm just going to say, you take something that preceded and you reuse it in a later song, and when you hear the melody or a couple words that came from that which was sampled, you go, oh, that's from such and such's band, or that's from such and such. What if in our preaching we use the narratives of the Hebrew Bible like that? When we're talking about Jesus or we're talking about something in the New Testament, even in the Old Testament, if we're reading the prophets, what if we sampled that which came before in the narrative to show that you're not making it up? You go, hey, maybe this is also, okay, let me think of a story. It's like if you're preaching on a crucifixion, you go like, yo, Jesus is kicking sin, death, and everything's tail. The demonic forces, he's kicking their tail on this cross. You can go, this sounds similar to David and Goliath. What if you're not David, but Jesus is David who's conquering the giant of sin, death, and the enemy? And everybody else is like the Israelites, like, oh my God. And he says, no, I'm the one who fights on behalf of this. Or what if Jesus is like Moses, who's destroying the powers that enslave us? And he's leading a new exodus, not only through his baptism, but through the cross. It's just what I'm trying to communicate is that I think using the scriptures as your base of narrative and story helps them see that this is a cycle. We don't have to reinvent the wheel of like, oh, let me try to figure out how to create a story to make this relevant. No, the scriptures give the stories where the relevancy is inherent. So what if we just sample, constantly sampling in our preaching? At least it's been helpful for me. So you could take that and leave that.
How, and this is an unfair question, but especially with the amount of time left, but like there are real critiques that very like smart kids bring to the table. One thing I love about the next generation, how just resourced they are. Access to information, so smart. And some of it is misinformation, like it's preconceived ideas they're bringing to scripture that are misinformed. And some of them are appropriately informed. I mean, it's not a simple book at times, we've talked about that. And so whether it's slavery, the feeling that the Bible's homophobic or contradicts itself, these problems that seem to come up. And again, it's an unfair question because we don't have enough time to like address each one. But I just wonder if you have any wisdom about how you would approach those conversations. So a student is being invited to know the Bible and they bring this response that either they've heard or they found on their own. How do we respond to that?
Please don't shut it down. You will lose them very quickly because there are plenty of other philosophies and people that are willing to receive those questions and then give their insight to things. We don't need to have all the answers, right? But we do need to be a place for them to go, I need to ask this because I'm struggling and it doesn't make sense. I don't trust this. And you go, yeah, that's what this is about. Even the closest followers of Jesus, while he was walking the earth, were asking questions and still go, dude, I don't get it. And he's like, okay, well, we'll keep progressing. And even after that, they still go, I don't get this. Paul says, I'm perplexed. Like, what makes it think that we're not going to be perplexed, right? Like, the man saw Jesus himself. Like, anyways, all that to say, When you allow them to ask the questions, it builds the trust.
Yeah.
I would not be following Jesus right now had it not been for the spaces for me to ask. I still ask questions to this day.
Wow.
I'm like, hey, yo, Tim, bro, like this, all right, break this down, bro. What you think? And he shares his thoughts. And if I have a different take, it's space to do that because that's what builds the rapport. It's the moment that you go, no, we're not going to talk about homosexuality. We're not going to talk about any of that stuff. We're not going to talk about gender. We're not going to talk about identity. We're not going to talk about whatever that they might be thinking about. It's like, why would I trust you with anything else? If you're not willing to hear what's most pressing for me right now, I can't trust you with the other stuff. So, and it's okay for you to say, I don't know.
Say that again for the people at the back.
Hey, for the people in the back, it's okay to say, I don't know, but please don't shut them down because that's how we learn. When you're kids, or if you have kids, when you were a kid, all you did was ask questions. And that's how we get formed. And Jesus is not afraid. I know this is a cliche, but he's really not afraid of the questions. How many people that we could read about in the scriptures was poking at him all day long? So should we pay these taxes? Or what's the deal with that? Who are you? Whose authority are you teaching by? And sometimes he would answer in a way you're like, I don't know what he said, but he's not afraid of any of, he's seen all of this. Okay, last preaching moment, sorry. We got a couple seconds. There is nothing new under the sun. He saw everything that's going on today in his time. It just looked a little different. We all got issues, it's different magazines, whatever you want to call it, but he's seen all of this. The Roman Empire was rambunctious with so much of what we see today. He wasn't afraid of it then, and he's still not afraid of it now. He's literally king of the world. And he says, don't cause these little ones to stumble.